There's nothing particularly unique about Friendsgiving. It's just Thanksgiving with friends. But it's popular on a lot of sitcoms and reality shows. And there were many years where my siblings and I, we would celebrate Thanksgiving with our family, but then we'd also get together with a bunch of friends from camp in different places and have a Friendsgiving as well. And for a church that consists of many people who are expats and have different reasons for being in Taiwan, I think a lot of us engage in celebrations in this kind of way. Whether we call it Friendsgiving or not, many holidays and just different life events are celebrated with friends in lieu of family. And so while family is of the utmost importance, there's also something deeply profound and Christ-like when we engage in life in deep friendships. So last time I was here, we talked about the Spirit-filled community that Paul talks about in Galatians. And with friendship, we're going to look at a bit of a zoomed-in version of community. A bit of community, but on a more micro level. C.S. Lewis wrote a book called The Four Loves. And in it, he talks about 4 different Greek words that are often used for love in the Bible. He talked about storge, which is basically affection, particularly between a parent and their child. He talked about eros, which is like a romantic type of love. He also talked about agape, that unconditional spiritual love of God. And the other love he talked about was philia, or friendship. Lewis wrote this about it. To the ancients, friendship seemed the happiest and most fully human of all loves, the crown of life and the school of virtue. The modern world, in comparison, ignores it. You see, friendship is the least natural of these 4 loves. It's not like the love that is inherent between a parent and their child, or a child and their parent, and that's like literally necessary for survival. It's not the love that seems to kind of just happen to us and that sparks out of an attraction for someone else. And it's not the love that encompasses our salvation and reconciliation. It's less necessary or instinctive as those types of loves. Friendship comes when, for whatever reason, you choose somebody and you say, I want to spend time with you. Usually it's based around some sort of shared interest or connection. And Kaohsiung, for me, all my friends basically are because they do freestyle basketball with me, we play disc golf together, we go to the same church, or they're an elderly man at the park where I like to practice freestyle. I have a lot of the park near us, it's just a bunch of old guys and me, and we get along great. But in all of these situations, when we make a friendship, it's a choice. And one of the books of the Bible that talks about this at length is Proverbs. It emphasizes the importance of both choosing and forging deep friendships and how that can aid us in our walk with the Lord. So today, we'll be looking at a bunch of Proverbs that talk about friendship. As it is Proverbs, note that these are not rules, these are not promises, but these are wise principles that tend to be true. Along with these verses, the late Tim Keller also came up with a list of what he called the 4 C's of biblical friendship. And we'll also use those as a bit of a memory aid. So I'm going to pray and then we'll dive into Proverbs. Father, I thank you for this morning, for the opportunity to gather. I pray that your Spirit would just fill us up this morning, give our hearts and our minds an attentiveness to you. God, I just pray that you would speak clearly through your word and that we would feel just motivated from you to pursue and engage in deep friendships and be a good friend to others. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so number 1, the first C is constancy. Proverbs 18:24 says, "One who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." I have 1,829 friends. At least that's what Facebook tells me. But honestly, I have friends on Facebook and I have no idea who that person is. True friendship requires sticking with someone through thick and thin. We see this even in Jesus' life. He had many followers, but then he also had his 12 disciples. And even more than that, he had Peter, James, and John as his even tighter inner circle of best friends. And so what does it mean that a real friend sticks closer than a brother? You see, a sibling will generally love you no matter what, right? We're blood, we're sticking together. But a real friend doesn't just love you, they really like you. They chose you even though they did not have to. And there's a different type of trust that develops because a friendship was chosen even though it wasn't necessary. My best friend is a guy named Taylor Fair. And somewhere between my 8th grade and freshman year, we just basically decided we're going to be best friends. And we went to college together, we did all sorts of things together, and him and his wife actually visited us a little bit ago, and it was epic. But as I go through these Proverbs, I'm going to be sharing some different stories about him, but for whatever reason, he's just someone that we shared a lot in common, we understood each other, and I chose him. And because of that, I know he's going to stick with me through thick and thin. Proverbs 17:17 says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity." A friend loves at all times. Recently, Chris and I were looking for a new show to watch. And so nothing was sticking out to us, so we decided to go real old school and watch a show that began before we were born. And this show is called Seinfeld. And in Seinfeld, one of my favorite parts of the show is that the main character, Jerry Seinfeld, his friends and his neighbor are always just barging in. They're not letting him know beforehand. His neighbor Kramer just walking in his door. It's just always open. And I love that. It reminds me of when I was in college. My parents actually lived closer to my classes than my dorm room was. So I ended up moving in with them my sophomore year, and I had an open door policy. So there were times where I felt like my friends were at my place more than I was because we had Wi-Fi. But there was something that happened when there was that level of availability where we were just always with each other, and it wasn't like we had to create these plans a week from now in order to get together. But college was just this really special time where we were just with each other whenever we needed it. And availability, I believe, is a key to friendship. A friend loves at all times. Are you willing to interrupt what you're in the middle of, your plans, for the sake of a friend? Friendship often requires that you adjust your day, your week, in order to be there for someone. Do you make yourself available? Are you willing to be flexible, even though it means you're not going to get something done that you want to? And a brother is born for a time of adversity. When this verse uses brother, it's not referring to an actual sibling. It's talking about a relationship, a friendship that's so strong that it's like that of a brother. There's this one time I was working at camp, and I was drumming for the worship team, but I have this little MIDI keyboard that would be really useful for synths, but I'd left it at home. So it was family day, and a bunch of people were coming up, and so I asked my brother if he could bring that synth up for me. But my brother was a very spacey person, so he forgot. So it was in his house, but my friend Taylor hadn't left yet. So I called Taylor up, and I said, "Hey, Taylor, you know my little MIDI keyboard? It's somewhere in Mike's house, and I need you to get it. But the problem is his house is locked, so you're just going to have to find a way. So he went over to his house. He started banging on the windows, trying to find different spots. Thank goodness nobody saw him. But eventually he found a window in the basement that was a little loose, which is a little disturbing for my brother. But he was able to kick it in, sneak in through the basement. He goes upstairs. He does a few of their dishes to do a nice act for the day. He finds the keyboard, and then he walks out the front door. Or maybe he went back through the window, I don't know. And this was way out of his way. He said it took him an hour to figure out how to break into the home. It was a wild thing to ask. It also very much upset my sister-in-law. Tip, don't ask people to break into houses for you. But I knew Taylor would do it because he would do anything for me, even if it was a massive inconvenience for him. And a true friend will be there even when it costs something. The point of friendship isn't to make your own life better, even though that usually happens. The point of friendship is friendship. That filial love itself is the point. Love your neighbor as yourself. We are fulfilling the great command to love our neighbor as we seek to be a good friend to others. This is true both in church relationships, but also outside the church. Even with what I do for a living, I don't befriend people in order that they come to know Jesus. I deeply hope they come to know Jesus, and I strive to, out of love for them, share about him. But if that ever becomes the main point of a friendship, I don't think I'm a real friend. A friend is there for a friend out of love, not in order to gain something, even when that friendship comes at a cost. Carefulness, the second C of biblical friendship. Proverbs 25:20. I think this is hilarious. Singing cheerful songs to a person with a heavy heart is like taking someone's coat in cold weather or pouring vinegar in a wound. I don't know. I think all three of those. I specifically chose the NLT version because I thought it made this verse really funny. I think all those images are great. There was this one time Taylor was going to confess his love for somebody. And by confess love, it was like we were in high school and he had a crush on a girl and going to tell her. But we didn't know how it was going to go. We didn't know how she felt. So what we did is we prepared 2 boxes because in our mind, this was either going to be the greatest day of his life or the worst day of his life. And so in one box, we put all the best things we could think of. We got some cheese out. We got some really great drinks ready. We prepared some really encouraging Bible verses. We made a playlist of all of our happiest songs, and we had an episode of Arrested Development ready. And it was just going to be a straight-up party if it went well. But then we also had a sad box. And in the sad box, we had a bunch of just verses from Lamentations. And ones from Psalms about water enveloping the earth and things like that. We had pickles and mayonnaise ready. I know, we were going to really wallop in the start. We had this really long film about death and a playlist all about never finding love. It was, I wish I could remember all that we have, but it was absurd. And so he goes, meets with this girl, he confesses his love, and he comes back, and I'm like, okay, I got to be ready all in one way or the other. And he was like, well, it was actually kind of medium. She didn't turn me down, but she wasn't fully ready to commit. So it was like, well, I guess we got to do both boxes. And when I tell you that it was the most emotional roller coaster of a day ever, I'm not exaggerating, because we would go back and forth, movie about death, Arrested Development, fun laugh television episode, really encouraging Bible verses about never, all the sorrows of life. And it was a roller coaster. But part of it being a friend is knowing somebody well enough to know what they need. Do they need someone to be quiet with them, to just sit with them? Or do they need someone who wants to talk everything out? Do they want to chat? Is your friend someone who wants to be alone or in a big group? Being a friend means getting to know somebody well enough that you can support them how they need. And whether that it's in a happy time, a sad time, whether they're feeling angry or anxious or relieved, or whatever combination of emotions one might feel. Part of being a friend is being sensitive to them and being careful so that you can support them in both good and bad times. And this takes a lot of work. Being careful and thoughtful as a friend means not just being reactive, but also being proactive. Trying to anticipate ways that you can support a friend when you know that something difficult is coming up. Asking questions and really listening to understand what they need. Even if you don't feel the same way, we can still try to enter into someone's struggle or their celebration. You know, a lot of times it's really hard to celebrate with someone when they have some great success, but you don't feel that same way. That maybe their success brings up something hard you're going on with, or your life just isn't well, and it's really hard to be happy for a friend. But friendship means striving your best, even though you can't do it perfect, but to enter into that celebration or enter into mourning when you don't feel like mourning. There are some people who are just innately gifted at this. Carissa is just very good at crying with people. And I don't have that same gifting, but I know that I can give it my best shot and try my best to enter into that pain that a friend might be going through. The third C of biblical friendship is candor. Proverbs 27, 5-6 says, "An open rebuke is better than hidden love. Wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy." And Proverbs 29:5 says, "To flatter friends is to lay a trap for their feet." At our wedding, my friend Taylor prepared a best man speech, but he didn't direct it towards me. It was directed towards Carissa. And the title of it was, 10 Things I Hate About You. And here are what some of those things were. I hate how much you love to eat good food with Jake. I hate how much you love to do adventurous things with Jake. I hate how much you love Jake so much that you'll serve him. And basically, it was a joking way of saying that he used to be that guy, like he used to be that friend for me, but now Carissa was so great that she fulfilled all of those things. And so I knew it was all in jest. But because of my relationship with Taylor, I could hear him say 10 things I hate about you. But if some like stranger or somebody else were to go say that, I would be livid. And so there's this aspect of friendship where we need to be careful, right? That was the last point. We need to be gentle. But true friends are able to say things to you that others cannot. We need to be honest with each other and say the hard things that need to be said. There are things that are even really hard to hear from a spouse or a parent or really anyone else in our life. And there are specific things that we need a friend to come and say to us. And this isn't easy for either party in our friendship. It can really hurt to say things to a friend that they need to hear. It can be really hard to do that. And it can hurt to hear those things too. But a true friend, you know when you've built that relationship that they're on your side. And when someone in life is generally building you up and encouraging you, then you're much more able to handle criticism that you need to hear. And while it might hurt in the moment, in the long run, if you really care for a friend, we need to be willing to have those conversations. We also need to be genuine in how we build up our friends, avoiding flattery. Say encouraging things, but do not flatter. It might feel good in the moment, but that's not looking out for the best interests of your friend. Be honest about your friend's strengths. Talk about those things and champion friends where they should be championed, but don't be excessive and insincere about how great your friend is at whatever. Be honest with them, encouraging, but to be insincere and excessive in flattery is to lay a trap for their feet. The last C is counsel. Proverbs 27:9. The heartfelt counsel of a friend is as sweet as perfume and incense. Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. There was this one summer, I talked a lot about camp, and that's because I did Christian camps my whole life. And this one summer it was a marathon. I had 6 weeks of one camp, and then I went home for 2 days, and then 2 weeks of another, and went straight to 2 weeks of another one. And for those of you, if any of you have worked at a Christian camp, you know that it can be exhausting. And so I got home and I had those 2 days off. And I was thinking, this is so great. I'm going to be able to go home and just sleep and rest and recharge. But I got home and Taylor was at my house. So I was like, well, we got to hang out. And we ended up shooting basketball in my backyard with this little hoop. And we ended up staying up to 4 in the morning. And even though it was my time to get sleep, I just said, whatever, let's just shoot. It was pouring rain outside, but he had stuff he wanted to talk through with me, and I had stuff I needed to talk through with him. And even though I didn't get the physical rest that I maybe needed, the counsel that we were able to give each other, the way we were able to talk through things that God was doing in us and problems we were having was so worth it. And I remember that night vividly. You see, a friend knows you. A friend understands you. And you know and understand a friend. So when you give each other counsel, you can understand why they might give you that piece of advice. You can trust them with that advice. And Taylor knows that I have blind spots and biases in the way I think and see things. So he's able to speak to me in a way and give me advice that just other people aren't able to. And it takes a humility in this. A humility to receive counsel and really consider what a friend says to you. But one of the aspects of friendship that can really sharpen us as people is to counsel one another, to open up to one another and receive it from each other. It's a two-way street. A true friend will both reveal stuff that's going on and receive counsel. Transparency and vulnerability open the door to this kind of relationship. If we can't just be the friend that gives advice. And if we want advice and we don't understand why we're not getting it, maybe it's because we're not being transparent or vulnerable enough. It can be scary, but we need to let people in. Take down the walls, take down the masks, whatever projections we might put out, and be honest with a friend about our true thoughts, our feelings, our struggles. And the more honest and vulnerable we are, the more honest and vulnerable a friend will be. And this opens the door to giving and receiving good counsel. So let a friend in. For some reason, I feel like a lot of these things, and especially this, can get a little harder as we become adults. I feel like some of these aspects of friendship, of really letting someone into your life, we have this kind of curated lifestyle up until we get out of school. And as we become more adult in our life, sometimes we can lose this. But I'm telling you, having genuine friendships will sharpen you. Let people in and be willing to give advice whenever a friend is looking for it. Before Chris and I got married, like a year before, I moved to Minnesota from Kansas. And I did not have a lot of money. And my grandma had recently lost my grandpa. And so I was like, hey, Grandma, do you want to live together? And so I roomed with my grandma for a year. And let me tell you, there were quirky parts of it. We had an Alexa smart speaker. She called her Alexis. And she didn't really understand the concept of volume control. So I would wake up at like 5:30 in the morning to Elvis just blasting. And this went on for months. And there were just a lot of funny things like that, but it was a really incredible and meaningful time for me. And this Thursday morning was actually her funeral. It was from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning this time. And all my extended family was able to get together, which I can't remember. I don't remember the last time that's been able to happen. All 19 of her great grandkids, all their parents. And as many of you know, it's tough not being able to be there for those type of things. But the thing that really helped me get through it is on Wednesday night, the night like right before the funeral, I always have freestyle with some friends. And they hung out they hung out with me for a while after. We talked about this and just other stuff, and I just didn't have to be alone. They were always down to just hang out with me. And then Thursday night, we had a friend from church arrange, in our church in Kaohsiung, it's all Taiwanese, it's all locals, but we had a Thanksgiving together, which for most of the people there is their first Thanksgiving. And our friend found a turkey. He said it was the last one he could find, and it was super expensive. But we did a bunch of American Thanksgiving things. And I don't know, if it weren't for my friends, it was a really hard week, but I think it would have been a lot harder. And I think a lot of us are in a similar boat, where we have kind of this, a little bit different of a life in terms of family, and everyone needs friends, but a lot of us really need friends. And you don't know the people around you who are in a boat like I was always. So be there for people. You can't control how good a friend is to you, but you can be a good friend. Sometimes it is unfair, whether it just feels that way or sometimes it legit is. You have to pull more weight than somebody else in a friendship. I've been there. It's hard. It's tough. But we do have the ultimate example of someone pulling more weight than he deserved. Despite all our shame, all our mistakes, all our failures, all the way that we have ever let God down, Jesus still gave his life for us. Gave us the ultimate example of love and of sacrifice, even when it came at a cost. So let's thank him for that and ask him for his help. He knows what we're feeling. He knows what it's like. And he will help you. So I'm telling you, friendship is special. Life is distinctly richer and more beautiful when we do it with friendships. And being a good friend doesn't guarantee your friends will be there for you, but it helps a lot. And even if they don't return the favor, it's more than worth it. So how can you be a good friend? Maybe there's someone on your heart that you need to reach out to. Maybe you just don't even know where to begin. Maybe you need to reach out and seek out and discover friendships. Maybe you need to ask yourself, as a friend, am I constant? Am I available? Am I there for people? Am I careful? Am I proactive in trying to be sensitive to what my friends' needs? Are you candid? Are you honest with your friends? Having the hard conversations and being honest in your encouragement with them. Are you transparent and available? Do you offer counsel and receive it well? Maybe you have a lot of surface level friends. You have friendships, but I don't know, it just doesn't feel worth it, or it's a little too scary to go deep. And maybe you need to be more vulnerable and ask hard questions. We all have different strengths and weaknesses in our relationships, but let's seek to forge better ones. And let's love our friends well. I want to end with this short passage from John. I'm not going to say anything about it. I feel like the text is so rich. I just encourage you to really listen and ruminate on these words. John 15. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I told you this so that joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love each other.